picked a topic which has started to come up with increasing frequency in our discussions with founders, I would say over the last at least 6 months, that I have been noticing it, which is around customer success. It is also not very surprising, at least to us, because software buying is a tougher environment today than what it used to be earlier, at least in the recent past. And customers are more demanding than what they were earlier. They want to see higher proof points around value. And in some sense, the success function starts to become a lot more critical. We have Manan and Varun, both, I think, founders that we have known for a long time, as co-hosts for this one. And I think it would have been hard to find a better set of folks to discuss customer success with. Varun and Manan, if both of you could just give some overview around how the success function is structured in your respective organizations today, and then do have a couple of more follow-up questions to build on that, uh, just to set some more stage, some more context for the audience.
So to give you a very quick idea of how CS is organized in Recruiterflow, we divide it into mainly two buckets. One is the customer ops, and the other is the account management. So the customer ops takes care of migrations, customer support, right? So the chat support and things of that, things like that, and implementation, right? So especially for larger customers, there is a implementation journey. So the ops takes care of that, and then there is the account management, or CSMs, right? So customer success managers, that whole function. So where they are, everybody has certain number of accounts, certain revenue to manage, where they're regularly in touch with these customers, have quarterly reviews, and things like that. And even in both these orgs, there are two separate divisions. One is what we like to call SMB, or long tail. So there is like a lot of customers, all of them generally less than $10,000 in ARR. And then there is mid-market kind of customers, so which is more than $10,000 in ARR. So below 10,000, you typically don't have a dedicated account manager. The idea there is that the whole org is built around processes. It functions a lot like marketing, and then there is and then there is a larger customers team, which is much more relationship driven rather than process and marketing driven. So that's how we have divided our customer success org.
Varun here. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Enterpret. For those of you who don't know, Enterpret is a customer feedback analytics platform. So we unify all customer feedback a business gets from sales call to support tickets into a singular platform, and build custom AI models to make it analyzable, just like product analytics is on the user behavior side. Fairly early in the journey, it's an early stage startup, but at Enterpret, customer success is responsible for the entire journey of the customer, right from the moment they turn from a prospect to a customer. And that involves activating them on a platform, and maintaining the relationship, and continuously understanding like what are the business outcomes we can help them accomplish, whether it is and what needs to happen for that, whether it's more training sessions, helping on a special project, or discovering any new initiatives happening with the economic buyer on the customer's journey. But yeah, they executing from the most tactical of things to the most strategic of things as needed, and bringing in other people from the rest of the company, from engineering, myself, as needed, as resources to help continuously make sure that we can deliver the promised outcomes that we promised them when they were prospect.
Understood. And when did you guys first feel the need for a customer success function?
I hired a customer success manager before we had a customer. So because we had one customer, we hired a CSM. So and I always feel, I think, like I've just heavily opinionated that the moment you get a customer, you just have to start investing in it early. Like it can't be like an afterthought function. So yeah, that's just in our DNA basically. So before I hired a SDR, a sales rep, I hired a customer success manager like a year before that, because whatever customers I was closing. So yeah, that was it.
And Varun, is that also partly to do with your own background, given that you had a the experience of setting up customer success at Amplitude. And where I'm going is, as a result, is there a little like how you think of customer success within Enterpret? Is that maybe a little bit different to how orgs have traditionally thought about customer success? Because usually what you hear as a pattern is that, initially a lot of the heavy lifting, and it's not that customer success is not happening. It's that most of the time it is founders who are doing it. And then at some point they say, you know what, we will now start getting in folks on a dedicated basis to look and build out a function per se. Versus in your case, it seems to have been built into the organization from day one, and just more trying to understand how that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. A really good question. I think, especially in the early stage journey, it is so hard to get customers, right? So if you get a customer, you have to do two things. One is you need to ensure they don't churn. So especially if you feel they're the right ICP, so you need to just go out of your way to deliver the best experience. Especially since the product itself is getting better, right, in the early stages, right? So you're doing a lot of discovery. And then second is you want to make sure that the rate of learning is between the customer and the product team is as rapid as it can be. And there is just one, and to that extent that you have one person whose job is just committed to that, right? And it's not someone's second or third job, because you just can't outsource that. And so I think those are the two primary things. And in the end, the most important business metric of all times is customer lifetime value. So you just have to start investing in it from get-go, in my opinion. Yeah, and especially in our case, when we're creating a new category, so a lot of it is behavior change, right? It's not we're not replacing an existing tool, so you have to spend a lot of time with customers. And in the early stage of company building, customer success is very first principles problem solving. You just have to very deeply understand every customer, their business model, their pain points they're having, and figure out how your product can attach to value at all times. Versus at large scale, it is mostly about just playbooks, basically. So but in early stage, you basically are just doing first principles problem solving on an ongoing basis.
Understood. And Manan, in your case, what?
Yeah, so in our case, I think it was more it was more organic, as you said, right? Initially, it was just three of us co-founders. We were the CSMs. We would go talk to customers. There were few customers, right? So we had closed them. We knew all of them very, very well. And we did not really have a customer success function, but quite like Varun, we had customer success function before we set up sales function. But we acted as customer success ourselves, because that was customer success kind of informed the entirety of the product roadmap. We wanted to be very, very close to that, especially in early days. Those ideal customers, they help you build the product, help you find that sweet spot of PMF. So we hired our first customer person at around 750, 800K in ARR. But yeah, I mean, and even then we were very involved in customers, and even today we have a lot of our customers where me, my co-founders, we act basically as CSMs for them as well.
Manan, are there any choices that you would have made differently with respect to customer success function at Recruiterflow, given the journey that you're seeing?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I wish we hired them earlier. The amount of, bandwidth that having a dedicated team brings, having an outside perspective from, sometimes as founders who kind of get tunnel vision, is very, very valuable. So if I was to do this again, I would hire, our first CSM a little bit earlier. I would also, the structure that we have arrived today is a result of a lot of, trial and error, a lot of mistakes, and a lot of struggle, right? So we, for the longest time, we did not really have two separate teams to manage long tail SMB kind of customers versus, mid-market customers. So everybody went to the same set of people. That was number one. Number two was that until we had put a proper structure in place, we didn't really, we had great relationships with our customers, but there was no process, there's no structure towards it. And as we have brought more of it, it has been quite transformational in terms of the signal that we can send back to our product roadmap, and the amount of understanding that we have of our customers. So yeah, I mean, I would hire a little bit earlier than we did, and I would actually, so the structure came into place as a forcing function because we just couldn't manage the way that we were running things. And we said, okay, fundamentally this thing is broken, we need to change it. We did a few experiments, but we should have done that way sooner, maybe at around 1.2 to 1.5 mil kind of ARR. We did it way later. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely change these two things.
One last question for Varun, and then we will open it up to questions from the audience, which is between what you saw at Amplitude and then now the journey of building Enterpret. What are things that probably are different, and what are things that scaled company versus startup, especially as a founder now that you see those, and what are lessons that you think are maybe constant?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I joined Amplitude when we just hit like a 1 million ARR. So this thing, early 2015. So was lucky enough to see the journey for 4 years there, from 1 to like 60 million ARR by the time I left. And I think it's just all about like you have to be open to change, because like every 6 months it's a different company when you're growing that fast. And the role basically started getting split because you need more specialization. So we created this function called solutions architect, who were just more focused on implementation and all of that. And then but we're continuously improvising and thinking about like how do we up level ourselves to be more strategic in how we think about onboarding and activating, and like what is the best customer success journey for where the business is today and the types of customers we're getting. Because when we like in early on, like we started working with like fast scaling consumer startups, and then you start working with like Fortune 100 companies, and it's a very, very different evolution. So and then that forces you to think about like that, do you need new team members to do that, or like is it a possibility you can up level some of the current team to manage handle that kind of motion as well, because it's a very, very different customer success motion. And I think like at early stage, when we're still first few $1 million in ARR, like it really is about not just process, right? It's about just first principles problem solving. Like process is very loose. The process is for you, you're not for the process. So and you just have very, very deeply understand every customer and just like focus on ensuring you're able to deliver the outcomes. So that is different. What remains same is like no matter like how big the company is, like your obsession and your desire to make the customer actually successful has to remain the constant, right? That can never dilute. Like that's the underlying ethos of like with which you approach the job cannot change. Like that's basically how it comes down to. So it and that can never change, no matter if it's like $10,000 ARR or $100,000, 100 million in ARR. Like that can never change. Yeah. So
given that there are some audience questions already in, would like to actually throw those across to both of our panelists. So first question from Namrata, and I'll pose this to Manan. According to you as a founder, what are some of the few skill sets that a CSM needs to have, and how do you actually benchmark them over the time that you have been there at it?
I'll talk mostly about Recruiterflow and our experience in terms of what, in our opinion and experience, what constitutes a very successful CSM. So the first thing that we look for, and I don't necessarily think it's a skill, but it's probably the most essential trait, is a very, very deep level of empathy and curiosity, especially in your customer success teams. A lot of the times, a lot of conversations start with a customer suggesting a feature that, hey, if this could be done this way, it would be fantastic. And a lot of those suggestions are very, on the surface, are very nonsensical. But you need to have a very high amount of curiosity and empathy to kind of dive deeper, ask a few whys, actually get to the heart of the problem that your user is facing, and then try and solve that problem. Because users always suggest solutions rather than telling you problems, right? So that's just how brains work. So without empathy, curiosity, it's just very, very difficult for anybody to do that. Second is for us, it is the customer success that drives most of our product roadmap. Transferring that information to product is a skill that's very critical, at least in our org, for you to be a very successful CSM. And third is, it sounds cliche, but it's very true, right? Like your ability to build very deep relationships that's beyond just work, right? A lot of you want your customers to vent to you, not just the problem about the product, but the problems of their business, their lives, because that's your alpha, right? Like that's your alpha over every other competition. So unlike Varun, we operate in a very competitive kind of a space, right? Like not a category creator. So that's what generates your alpha in terms of product differentiation, right? So those are the kind of these are the top 3 skills that we'll look for when we hire CSMs.
And I have a follow-up to that, but before that, would love to hear, Varun, your take also on the same question, which is what makes for a great CSM?
A great CSM feels like they're employed by the customer, not by you when you talk to them. Like it all like they're willing to fight with anyone inside the company as needed. Like that is the most underlying tenet. Is like when you talk to them, it feels like who's paying your salary here? Like because the way they talk about it, they are so deeply passionate about solving the underlying problem while being able to marry the business context of your company as well and knowing what its priorities are. But they're able to find that balance. Uh, but yeah, it is like it should almost feel like there's they're a double agent. Like they're like, hey, who are you working? That's just the level of obsession they have, and that's like the number one skill, and that just can't be. I don't think like you can. I don't think you read about it or like listen to it and you have that. You just either have it or not. Like how you operate, and what you think is most important in the business. So, I think that's number one. Second is like being like really adaptable. Like it is like you have like we talked about like Manan said, like you have to be very curious. It have to be like first principles problem solving, and you cannot be over hyper prescriptive to the process or the playbook of how you do things today. You can't put every customer through the same process. You just have to really understand the state of the business, what's important, and continuously keep doing deep discovery and qualification as to where can we attach our product to create the most impact for the business at this stage in their journey, right? So, uh, yeah. So I think the most underrated skill there is like they're just very good at doing qualification. They're in terms of like continuously discovering the most important customer pains that we can attach our product to.
Understood. And the follow-up question was, where do you find like what is the best archetype to go find these great CSMs?
It's interesting. I think that wasn't my plan, but like the we have 2 CSMs at Enterpret, and both are ex-consultants, I would say. So I think because I think in it sort of like melds in well to our stage of the business because they're used to doing like first principle problem solving. They're like every 6 months they're on very different industry, different projects, just trying to solve the problem, and you especially in like management consulting, if you develop a very like we call it customers, but like they call it clients, like clients focused like in nature. So plus they also have a lot of polish around like like just how you present, and like they can talk to the executives also really well and present and also operate in the tactical details. So I think both of the folks we have are management consultants, but not to say like that is the only archetype basically, but like especially in early stage when it's like category creation and it's just first principle problem solving, like I think like they were the ones who were what we were testing for. Like the 2 people were able to do that. Yeah, and the other is like I think it is, you also have to see like their comfort with your stage of company building. So both folks we've hired have worked in early stage startups before also, besides having consulting experience. So they understand that, there is a joyful chaos basically, going on, and you have to love that. You have to embrace that. If that frustrates you, not a good fit. So I think so you have to see like whether they're good fit for the problems of how customer success should be run, and whether they'd be a good fit for the stage of the business also, in how they approach the job.
Right. Yeah. So for us, we typically like to hire people with industry experience. So not SaaS, because we work in recruiting and staffing industry. Typically, people both in CS and sales, to be honest, people who come from that industry, because we are a vertical SaaS product. There is, so we have to go really, really deep. Also, we are a very critical product for our customers, right? So we are probably the first or maybe the second most expensive tech product that they use. And the average customer of Recruiterflow uses it for more than 3 hours a day. So, so very critical part. And you have to have very deep understanding of how the business works. So they can hit the ground running. In a lot of cases, have a lot of context about the business model, the team structures, and things like that. So we that. And the another thing that I think Varun touched upon it a little bit, but there is going to be a lot of conflicting priorities that you are going to face as a CSM, but how to navigate through that, both on the product and operations end, as well as on the customers end. That it's something that's very critical, right? So Varun used the word chaos. So it's very chaotic, but you need to be able to think very clearly in that chaos, stay focused on the longer run, while making sure that you are able to deliver results for customers, as well as deliver intelligence to product.
Understood. Bunch of questions which on the Q&A panel, which if I all around the theme in my head, at least around how to think of the org, the CSM, like the CS org. And maybe I'll pick one to start with, which is a question I think from Abhijit on
How do you define?
how do you define KPIs for your CSMs?
Sure. So, I mean, there are some KPIs that are very, very easy, right? Like NPS, right? Like you have your set of accounts. What's the NPS and the trend of the NPS quarter on quarter? Every CSM that we have, we give them some headliner accounts, right? Like some of their large. So it's not just a function of ARR, but like it's definitely one part of it. But like some headliner accounts and just NPS of those headliner accounts. We of course, right, like revenue retention or churn, whichever way you want to look at it. And what we also do is we take pulse. It's not necessarily NPS. NPS is across the entire user base, but for larger teams, we take pulse of their key decision makers, senior management of those teams, and how happy they are with CSMs, right? So that's a separate metric that gets tracked. We don't really, at least right now, we don't really have a lot of upselling and cross-selling going on. So we don't really have any measurements around that. But as we start that, we will have KPIs around that process as well.
Maybe the same question to Varun, and probably if you can give answers across your experience at Amplitude, where there might be more cross-selling and upselling, which would be happy.
Yeah, I can happy to share that. I personally am strongly against like customer success being accountable for upsell and cross sell. Like they have to be hyper focused on just delivering value to the customer. And like I said, man, if like when I said it should almost feel like they work for your customer, not you. And so if their expectation, if you're asking them to also negotiate contracts and be accountable for like revenue, like I think you're putting them in a very difficult, conflicting position. And it's very hard to build customer trust also, right? Like it's just a very different relationship. Once you start talking dollars, like it's a very different relationship. So yeah, I think you should either build an account management function or just sales team in Amplitude, like for the larger strategic accounts, the sales team obviously continued to stay along, and it was part of their quota to get like either upsells or cross sells from the enterprise accounts. But you should like delineate customer success from driving, being accountable to like a certain revenue metric. They obviously have a role to play, like which is like they should prevent churn, right? Their goal is to ensure that customers are so happy that upsell is a very natural conversation. But they should not be executing on that or discussing that, in my opinion. In terms of metric, like what we track, we did this at Amplitude and even at Enterpret, is like, we define what is our products like North Star metric. So at Enterpret, our, we are a customer feedback analytics platform. So our North Star metric is weekly insight consumers. So insight consumer is someone who ran a query and then did something which would signal an act of value, that they saved a feedback or they shared a link or they made a dashboard, or they invited someone else basically. So they found something of value basically, which is, hey, they found something valuable in the product. So, and we review that for, so the customer success managers, they are measured on just like what are the weekly insight consumers for every single account? Like, are you driving people to increase what we think is our product's North Star metric? So, and so we review that every week for every account, every customer. We review weekly insight consumers every week, and wherever it is going both exceptionally well, like why is it doing so well? Like what is happening here? We discuss that to see what else can we be doing, or how do we apply those learnings to other accounts, or if it's going underperforming, we root cause it, diagnose it, and figure out what do we need to do here. But that's the number one thing we measure. Yeah, and we did this at Amplitude also.
Understood. Varun, one follow-up question, and this again feeds back into that larger theme around the org, right? And I think this has been a debate that I've heard several times on, should you have success teams responsible for revenue or not, right? Now, in your case, as you mentioned, you have a fairly clear opinion, and I think makes sense that, on one hand, I'm batting for you and I'm fighting for you, and on the other, I'm saying, hey, give me more dollars. Becomes hard to sort of wear both those hats at the same time. Now, what role? So one is, of course, that the customer is very happy. But when upsell is going to happen or cross-sell is going to happen, then does the customer success team have no role to play? I understand, in your opinion, they should not be responsible. But will they at least have some way to support the sales team? Or is it saying that these are two independent functions? As long as function one does its job well, function two's job becomes easier.
Oh, no, they should definitely support it. Like they build the business case, like, because they understand the customer's journey so well and the pain point that the reason you need to go from X to 2X is because this is the pain problem we're trying to solve it. We've solved it. And as we've been talking about for the last few months, and we talked about in the last QBR, the economic buyer said that these are the next outcomes we want to accomplish, and here's a plan to accomplish that. And that's why we need to modify the contract. Like they build the business case, like, because they've been working every day so closely with the customer. So they build a business case, and in fact, you should comp them on that, like in a larger scale.
That was going to be my next question, actually. Exactly that. Should you then at least have that as part of their incentive structure?
Yeah, they again, like I think they it goes both ways. Like I feel like gross retention is a better metric for customer success than net retention. Because in net retention, you get incentivized to extract the extra dollar from the customer, right? Like versus like ensuring that, hey, we are happy not delivering, but they activate the customer, they get them successful, and their goal should be to get the customer to such a good place that upsell and cross sells are a very natural conversation. And then when it does happen, their goal is, in the case of upsell, their goal is to build the business case for why that customer should spend more. And for cross sell is a different division with a large enterprise, is to create that internal case study, right? Like, hey, this other division, this is the internal case study for them that you can reference. And they're creating champions basically in the other division, so that in the rooms when that you're not in, like the first division who's already a customer, they are selling on your behalf. No, you should buy them. They're a great team, man. Like, and great product. Here's the value we have gotten, right? So, and if they are enabling that, like they should get a small percentage of that. But like again, it should be like that should be a smaller percentage. And what really matters at large scale is gross retention from customer success, not net retention. That is a sales metric, right? Basically.
Got it. Manan, I know you are planning, as you said, to have the upsell and the cross-sell in the function. And would love to understand your rationale for why that should reside within the customer success function.
No, I mean, I think I probably did not articulate it very well. So the idea is that, but the final sale, right, like the dollar and the negotiations and all of that will be done by the sales team.
Understood.
But the motion will start from CS, and of course will be part of their targets and their comp. But I agree with Varun wholeheartedly that it creates a very conflicting incentive, right? So getting CS to be talking sales. So you don't want to create conflicting incentive for the same team. But yeah, I mean, it's part for the way we plan it. It's going to be executed by the sales team, most likely from the same AE that sold them originally. But the motion will start from CSMs.
From the CSMs. We have, Manasaj, who I'm just going to, yes. Manasaj, please go ahead. You can.
Hey guys, really great to hear all of you guys here. I'm actually attending one of these SaaS talks for quite a long time. It was one of my favorite things to do during the lockdowns. Every Friday, come over and join and hear some really cool guys. And Varun, man, what a terrific hairstyle you got. I'm sorry you can't see me. My hairstyle is also not that bad. I also have pretty long hairs, being a drummer myself. So my name is Mansaj. I'm running my second SaaS business, sold my first one. I wrote a very interesting book about that. And now I'm building a customer success solution because we struggled so much in our last startup. And as I was hearing you guys and hearing the questions, I was trying to give a few answers from my perspective in the Q&A box. I don't know if anybody saw it or not, but in my limited understanding of customer success, there are basically two important facets where I see CS being a very important part. So CS happens in the intersection of data and action. Now, data is basically going to come into CS from a multitude of variety of sources. Your customer data resides into your mixed panel, amplitude, segment, Pendo kind of product utilization apps. There is data in your CRMs. There's data into your ticketing solution like Freshdesk, Zendesk, all of this. There's data into your feature request management tools like Jira or Product Board where customers have requested features from you. There's data into your Stripe or Chargebee or Zoho Books or QuickBooks where your customers are billing and invoicing with you. There's also data in your emails and Slack. So there's a multitude of data that has to come from all of these sources. But one more important data source that's actually always very highly neglected is something which both of our speakers here, Manan and Varun, both of you mentioned. This is the North Star metrics of your product. So while Manan, you were speaking, I was looking into Recruiterflow's website. I could think of like at least 30, 40 KPIs that actually ensure success for your customers. Now, I'm sure for someone like you would have a CS team who's looking into all those 30, 40 KPIs across all the customers on every Monday morning so that you know that okay, if something craps up, you can go and figure out what to look forward to. Otherwise, it's a chaos, right? I mean, there's so much data and so much information that's impossible for a CS team to figure out. So first step is to actually get your data sorted. Without that, really, no action can ever take place of real value. So once you've got data sorted, like, okay, you've got your intention from Amplitude, Mixpanel, Pendo to give you the product analytics. This data coming from your ticketing, feature request, billing, invoicing, communication, and of course, your product North Star metrics. This is the entire set of your CS data points. Next question is, okay, now what do we do from there? Then, of course, when something goes into red or something goes into amber, and what is red and amber to me, it is the people who are the laggards, right? So the least in the if you plot a data point into in a curve, the bell curve will tell you that the top below last 10% are the ones who laggards. So focus on them, and then basically on those, You will then run your SOPs, your playbooks, your success plans, your actions, tasks. So unless we get the data part sorted, that's why one of the questions I wrote that a good CSM is somebody who understands the organization's data the best. They know that, okay, my customers analytics data is here in Mixpanel, it's here in text in my CRM, it's here in my ticketing, here in my billing. And that's when that person can really stitch together an entire view and give you a perspective of if there is any blind side about that entire business and customers. I have tried to understand space quite a lot, and I'm really curious to you guys, because you guys have built really super scaled out business, about how you guys are managing this data integration. Like, are you seeing all the data points into one place? Is that how you're running it right now? How's it going for you guys?
And sorry, Manasij, if I were to just maybe try and articulate my understanding of the question, and I think it overlaps with one of the other questions that people had asked on the Q&A panel, which is just what tooling should one use and how important is the tooling for a CSM function? Is that the right way to think about it?
Tooling is one way. I'm just the objective is to basically know that, for example, let's say you guys, Manan, you have a large scale out business, right? Are you guys looking into your product analytics, ticketing, feature request, billing, communication, invoicing,
Understood.
and product North Star all together for your CS team to actually make sense of the entire picture? That's basically what I'm trying to understand.
Oh yeah, you absolutely. So some time back, earlier, because we are a CRM ourselves, right? Like Recruiterflow is a CRM, so we use it for our sales team. We used to use it for our CS team as well. But about 9 months back, we decided that we'll take a dedicated CS CRM. So we implemented Vitally, transformational. So now there is data coming in from Recruiterflow, which is our also acts as our CRM. Data coming in from Amplitude, data coming in from Intercom, and there is a lot of workflow signals, right? Like people talking to each other, right in Vitally, right? Like so, that has been purely in terms of visibility and understanding where where we have holes in our process, where there is maximum room for improvement. It's been quite transformational. And right, so we, as I said, right, like we pull data from CRM, from product analytics, from Intercom, which is our support and ticketing system, as well as just conversations between different people.
Got it.
We have a couple of other people
Yes.
who also have questions.
Go ahead, Shant.
Just go ahead.
Hi, this is Abhijit here. I'm one of the co-founders at Seclore, and I've been managing customer success for some time. So just going back to the earlier question of sales and upsell, and so I do kind of resonate with what Varun said, but there's just one point I wanted to add, and maybe this is specific to the kind of product that we have, where there are many different components and there are many different ways to solve a customer's problem, right? And when you go to a customer, and we are in the data security, so how do you secure your data? Giving that flexibility to the customer success managers, where they are not bound by what is already sold to the customers, and they have the flexibility to go beyond and talk about other ways of solving the customer problem. I have seen that it really enriches the discussions that happen with the customer, right? And typically when these CSMs, they are talking to either the business heads or the security heads in our case, having that flexibility really gives them the power to find the right solutions rather than staying restricted. Whereas typically I've seen when it comes to the sales side interactions, they are a lot more transactional, right? And I have seen a lot of cases where large upsells require a long gestation period sometimes, right? You have to work with the customer, seed the whole the idea and work on it, and sometimes it might take 3 to 6 months before the upsell happens. And typically the sales guys don't have that kind of patience.
but the customer success managers are the ones typically who are happy to kind of nurture that whole process. So in our case, the sales does carry the upsell target, but the customer success managers are very much incentivized for generating that upsell also. Just wanted to share that thought.
Very interesting. To what extent do you incentivize folks, if I may ask?
So if I have to answer for Seclore, so for us it is almost, you can say, I mean, the sales commissions PCR sometimes changes, but roughly about half of what the sales guys make.
Got it. Good, Chantan.
Interesting.
So Manan, have you started? When did you actually start using a CSM platform for, at Recruiterflow?
Mid last year. So mid last year was the kind of a breaking point for us, where we saw that it was just utter chaos. There was, we did not really have, as I said, right, like we have these teams, ops and CSMs, and then focused on long tail SMB, and then focused on mid market and all of that. So before that, everybody was kind of doing everything. There was a lot of, we were very unorganized. We scaled up very, very fast without actually, kind of really thinking very hard about how this particular part of the org would look like. But yeah, we implemented about 8 months back. I think the product that we ended up deciding is called Vitally. There are a lot of great products out there, but yeah, truly been transformational. One major change that we were able to bring because of that, and very early during this conversation, Arpit, when he was introducing the talk, he was saying that lately customers have started demanding much more from their solutions, right? So so they're very, very ROI centric now, right? Like it's not that they were not earlier, but they're they're much more ROI centric today. What the new level of visibility that we have has enabled us to do, and the new org has enabled us to do, is now we bring CS as part of the sales process, right? So especially when we are, closing larger deals, where the CS will talk about, okay, so what we realize is that customers are not looking to buy features. They're not looking to buy, even solutions. They're looking for state change, right? Like they are here, and they think they can be here. They want that state change. For that, they are, kind of, when you implement Recruiterflow, you are basically, changing a lot of your processes. We take this opportunity when you're upgrading your tech to kind of also relook at your whole process. And that is what we realize is that they're coming to us for. And they think that, by changing the way that they work, they'll be able to, get that state change. And that is why we now bring CS much more early into the conversation. In fact, we even empower our AEs to, kind of give them a lot of information, a lot of collateral about, okay, this is how we are going to run the CS process, and, bring the CS team into the sales process to kind of help them envision, right? Like what that state, over the next 6 months to 1 year period, what that, state change is going to look like, and how we are going to help them do that. So, a lot of these things, right, like happened because we had so much better visibility because of, in terms of tooling that we had.
And more as a follow-up to what Manan said, but question directed to Varun. And see, it's broadly been a question in my head on this handoff between the AE or the sales function and the success function, right? How do you make that as smooth as possible? And clearly, I think there is one piece around saying we have more visibility. You can empower the teams to take more choices. Varun, any learnings, again, drawing on both the experiences from Amplitude as well as from Enterpret on how this works, right? Because sometimes there is a disconnect. Otherwise, that the AE can go and sell, you can promise like 5 things, which, will be almost impossible to deliver. and then the success team is going to come and tell you, you have just set me up to fail. So how do you make that process as smooth as possible?
Yeah, happy to answer. But I do want to address one point, Abhijit, also. So Abhijit, I do agree with you before that. I think so it's not that customer success managers can't talk to about new features and new capability your product can solve. They should definitely be empowered to do that. In fact, they're the best person to do it, especially if they've established a foundational trust with the team, because again, they know that, hey, this person is not trying to just extract money out of me for no reason, but if he thinks that this new thing will be helpful for my business, then it genuinely must be because that he's on my side. That's what I feel. So but at the same time, the nuance there is like you should not hold them accountable. Like if they don't get that upsell from them, like they can talk about it, they can pitch it, but the execution should be from the sales team. And at the same time, I think like I depending on the size of the account and the ARR, like the I mean, I would challenge like there's a whole different conversation, but like your AE should be a little bit more strategic than less transactional. Also, they should also have a very good understanding, especially if it's an important account, and continue to stay close with the customer throughout the journey. Now, coming to what you said, Arpit, I think the sales CS handoff is probably the highest risk point in a customer's life journey.
Yeah.
Without like that, it is such a because it's going from like a prospect to a customer, and like just like it is. I've seen so many bad mistakes happen, and like the gaps or the lack of handoff at that point basically just sets up the customer for all suboptimal things and leads to a churn. There's so many churns I've like seen which could be pointed to the sales CS handoff. It is so I think it doesn't get its due respect as what a critical event that is, in my opinion. So I think there's two things. One is there needs to be a culture where um, like technically the deal is sold when the customer signs a contract, but you still are not selling them. You sold them when they're actually activated on your platform. When and I don't say onboarding is the steps you do. Activated is when they're activated on the platform and using it for what they bought it for. So till then you're still trying to sell them. So I think having that culture and like it requires like the salespeople to spend considerable amount of time with the customer success team doing the handoff. And then also on the customer success side, just like preparing. I mean, we use Enterpret aggressively, so we were able to like listen to the summaries of every gong call or every email that was sent while they were a prospect. So they come in prepared with, hey, here's what I've learned from my perspective. What do you see? And they have a discussion. They align on the key business metrics that this customer is trying to accomplish, and then it's on the sales person to get the kickoff call scheduled, join that kickoff call, ensure it goes well, and then slowly they back off from the process. But like it is, you have to really respect that handoff basically, right? So especially at like if your ACVs are in like mid 5 figures, like you should respect that. Unless you're selling $100 a month product, then it's probably different. But so yeah, I think it's a very important process that you should continuously look at if you're doing as well as you can.
And since you said that there is a contract which is signed and then there is a customer who's activated, right? And ideally what one should do is really make sure that the customer is activated. So if you were to take that one step further, would you link sales compensation also, like the incentive, not just to getting the contract signed, but to say, hey, you know what, that incentive is linked to the customer being activated based on
Man, I will
these
not do
XYZ
that.
metrics?
I will not do that, man. No good salespeople will join my company, man.
No, I just I just thought it was worth clarifying.
Yeah. No, but again, see, yeah, I think it's hard enough to sell software regardless. So, but I think so that there's a lot more nuance into that. So, yeah, but I would not do that. Yeah.
Okay. No, just to make sure that we understand, the extent to which you're pushing that argument. I know Vijay is also, raised their hand.
Yeah.
And hey, Vijay, if you could.
Hey, hi folks, great discussion, and thank you for everyone for the points. So my question is around a company which would have product focused for enterprises, typically high LTV and require a lot of support even after the integration and onboarding. So for such high LTV product, how would you advise structuring the organization? In general, I've seen companies doing it either where a tech first AE would farm the deals, close it, and also lead the future expansion and revenues with those particular accounts. And also there is a general model in SaaS companies where you have separate departments, SDRs, AEs, and then customer success team. So any thoughts on like which is the better approach for such enterprise focused product?
Manan, yours?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, what again, right? Like we are not super enterprise focused, so I don't really have a lot of context there. What we have seen work really well for us is that we do keep A's attached to the account for a really, really long time. And in the handoff, right, like sales CS handoff, we of course had our share of problems. What we realized is, so our sales process is also very consultative. We don't really do we don't do that, you sign this deal this month, I'll give you 10% off or any of that. We don't do any pushy kind of stuff. Because we sell to salespeople, they know all of those tactics, right? So they know it's not really going to work on them very well. So what we instead do is, incentivize salespeople to stay involved in the deal read for a really long time, right? So their incentives are on activated customer, right? Like, so there we differ with the way, Varun operates, but that is number one. And number two, right? Like the handoff, right? Like there is a check mark that the CSM has to kind of approve, and we call that transfer of trust, right? So the prospect bought your software, you built a lot of trust with that prospect, and now the job is for the AE is to transfer a lot of that trust from himself or herself to the CSM, right? So, and that's not, it doesn't happen over one call, it doesn't happen over a few emails. It's a process, it takes a few weeks. And then it is the CSM who says that, yeah, now I feel confident that this prospect trusts me as much as they trust the AE that they bought in the first place from. And we keep our AEs involved, as I said, right, like all the way till onboarding and implementation. But yeah, I mean, that is what has worked really, really well for us. In terms of expansion, right, like as I said, we haven't really done it yet, but our plan is motion started by CS and executed by A's.
Yeah.
Your org design should be a function of like what gets you the highest possible lifetime value from that customer, right? So in I would say, like, so for example, at Amplitude, the biggest bottleneck was implementation. Like customers would just like, because it required engineering resources to instrument product analytics, like we just couldn't go live for like several months, right? And like, so that, and we're like, hey, that's like the biggest bottleneck. But we noticed that once they're live, we are very good at like activating them. We can get them training, we can set up dashboards, we can set up workflows, and we get very good workflows. But the biggest bottleneck is just like, sometimes like, 90, 120 days go in like a larger enterprise and we're not even live. So we realized like, okay, like that's the problem to solve in our business. Then we basically split the CS org into two. So there's CSMs who like post implementation, and like solutions architect who was just hyper focused right from the get-go. It's just like, hey, how do we get this live within 45 days? And they were actually comped on that. They were just measured on, can you get this thing live in 45 days, basically. So so I think again, it comes down to like just really understanding the nuance of your category and who you're buying in your software, and just figuring out where the biggest risks are to maximum customer lifetime value, and just like designing your org to ensure that you can negate that.
I would again really want to thank both Manan and Varun, as well as Manasej, Abhijit, Vijay, and everyone who asked questions for participating. Learned a ton. And yeah, have a good weekend, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.